Hello, folks. Back again with ancient cosmography. Um, or like hello to my one viewer. So this is Morvern in the James McPherson in his his 18th century publication about the Fenian cycle. He says that Finn McCool was the king of Morvern. So, which I haven't found other poems specifically using that name, Morvern. I've seen the king of Alvin, but maybe, that could be a synonym. But it does fit for the fact that, the things that Finn McCool seems to represent are in this area. So I think he's the king not just of Morvern, but also of Mull and Skye and Isla and Jura, or at least Argyll and Knapdale and Kintyre. Because like right here is his baby face when the deer turns him into a baby, and to hide from or to trick Ben and Donner. But so then also in the Fenian cycle, I was discussing Diarmid, and it seems that Diarmid represents Papua New Guinea, because the story of Diarmid versus the boar, it matches what seems to be a depiction of Australia as a boar in the oldest cave art in the world, basically from Sulawesi. And it's showing Cape York Peninsula as its snout, with its kind of like point on one end and a kind of indent on the other side, and maybe a little indent on that side too. And so let's see, in the story, it's this Diarmid is this anthropozoomorph. He's just basically a man, but he's also described as a hawk, which fits for the depiction, what seems to be the depiction of Australia and Papua in the famous scene in the Lascaux Caves of France, where you have Papua as the recumbent birdman here, and then being trampled by Australia as the bison here. But of course, in Scotland and Ireland, didn't have bison, so they depicted him as a boar, like they did in Sulawesi, which also doesn't have bison. But yeah, this whole story is basically the same. It's like, it's the same as this. Like, it's the same depiction of Australia as this, but I don't know the exact story. I think the story of this painting is slightly different, but it's the same basic story as the Lascaux cave painting, where you have, even according to all the experts, basically, this is a scene where they both kill each other. It's like a hunter and the prey, and they both kill each other, and they're both like laying there either dead or dying. And in this case, the spear coming through seems to be the Wessel Islands that come out of that part, and look like kind of a spearhead. And then his hair, the big especially this, where there's a bunch of hair on the bison, seems to be the Great Barrier Reef area here. This is where the Great Barrier Reef is, and some other kind of reefs that have other names but are basically right next to that. And so yeah, in this one, this Celtic story, the spear, Mako Duin. So yeah, these hairs are really pointy. The reefs are very dangerous because it's all about sailing. It's all about these battles. It's all about things that sailors need to be wary of. So the javelin shaft fell shivered into 3. So there are 2 breaks in this main part of the Wessel Islands that really look like a spear. There's a break right here, and there's a break like right around there. So it's shivered into 3, and it recoils from the boar's hide, so it is a little ways away from the actual coast. Then from its sheath he drew his thin-leaved sword, and then he slew the monster. So I think that's this island right here, I think, is his sword, and I think this other island, or whatever you call that, is the sheath of the sword. And this peninsula could actually be the sword embedded, again, like embedded in the boar. So it's more it gives more details compared to this one, which just treats the whole Wessel Islands as one thing. But otherwise, it largely seems to conform to the depiction of Papua, especially, and certainly the hair of the bison boar. So yeah, he slew the boar with that, and then he was gored by a giant boar. Had already killed a number of men and hounds. Diarmid only took his short sword Beagle-tach and his yellow spear Gae-buid or something. So I think that's like, there, compared to everything else around it, the spear islands are yellow. Everything else is redder. And then this would be the short sword. It does look a bit like a kind of short, wide kind of sword. Can't see it too well here, but and it says water drunk from Finn's hands had the power of healing, but when Fionn, or however I'm going to just call it Finn. But when Finn gathered water, he twice let it run through his fingers before he could bring it to Diarmid. Threatened by his son Oysen and his grandson Oscar, he fetched water a 3rd time, but this time he was too late. Diarmid had died. So I think I found that part as well now. So Diarmid dies because Finn tricks him into measuring the boar against the bristles on his snout, on the top. It seems to be on the top of his snout. So that's where the Great Barrier Reef is. But also, it seems that the specific, it says there's a specific poison hair or quill or whatever, bristle that that kills Diarmid when he's trying to measure him, which is what these ancient sailors did. They sailed around islands trying to measure them and try not to get killed by hidden reefs. And but you know, because this the Great Barrier Reef, it's all along here on the front. And so guess it opened up like too much shit on here, maybe. So anyway, here's the the nose of the boar, and here's the belly of Papua, and then here's what seems to be the poison hair, which is Warrior Reef. So anyway, I just wanted to touch back onto that before showing what else I have found. So yeah, this the deadly poison bristle that did in Papua, because you know all the islands in ancient lore seems to be like all islands and continents and whatever are dead giants. So they just have different stories to like explain how they died or whatever. But yeah, so it says that, you know, water drunk from Finn's hands had the power of healing. So he was saying, okay, sure, I guess I'll heal you, Diarmid, even though it was him that got Diarmid killed, because he sent him to measure this boar that he knew he would die on the bristles of. But when Finn gathered water, he twice let it run through his fingers before he could bring it to Diarmid. Threatened by his son Oystein and grandson Oscar, he fetched water a third time, but this time he was too late. Diarmid had died. So I think I figured out what this is about. That basically, you know, like I think these larger islands here are seen as Finn's hands. You know, there's often that body parts will be kind of disconnected from the giant they're supposed to belong to just because they're part of some action scene, like Fingal's thumb as being Soai Island in the Inner Hebrides or whatever. But yeah, so this is this is Diarmid's head. You know, he's like a bird man. He's called the Hawk, but he's also a man who has like sword and spear and stuff. And this is actually named Bird's Head Peninsula in modern times, and this is named Bird's Beak Peninsula. And so this is like his open mouth. So he's like dying, or you know, he was dying. And so what it seems to be is that, because it's all about memorizing all these weird like straits that people have to sail through. So what it seems to be to me is that this is, that these are Finn's hands, and that all these islands here, like let's say this is Finn's hand. So he takes water into his hand, but then these are the islands of the water dripping through his fingers, because there's like a bunch of these little weird islands that go that way. And so that's the first time that he does that. And then the second time, I think this whole big ass thing is his hand. Or maybe this is his hand and this is his wrist, or I don't know. But somehow this is his hand, and all of these islands that kind of drip out of there, between there and there, are the water, or the drops of water dripping through his fingers. And then this is the third time where he's like, all right, dude, this time I'm actually going to feed this water to you. And this is the hand. And here's the water, like just about to, you know, like Diarmid can just smell the water. It's like just about to drop in and save his life, but he's already dead. So, womp womp. I mean, that's what these are, just like ridiculous and tragic stories that are not. I mean, they're not supposed to really be uplifting in a kind of, live, laugh, love kind of way, unless you actually have a sense of humor, and then yes. Um, so there you go. That does help to kind of explain this. I'm assuming that's what it is. I mean, there's a chance that this is one of the hands somehow. But I'm guessing that, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, who knows? I'm thinking it's this and this. Yeah. So there you go. And I mean, because it's like, how else are you going to explain something like that? Okay, there's these big, clunky, chunky islands, and then there's a bunch of little islands dripping out of the side of it. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, some people would be like, but it doesn't look exactly like a hand. It honestly doesn't have to look anything like a hand whatsoever. The point of metaphors, and the reason why they're the mark of intelligence, and why, unintelligent people, that's, they literally can't metaphor, is because, that's the leap. That's the thing. You say, like, oh yes, I understand this is not literal. It's a metaphor. And once you make that leap, you can use that to understand and convey, countless nuanced concepts. But some people, they just need everything to be very straightforward. And if it doesn't, it breaks their fucking brain, which is how it should be. Because people who can't accept nuance have no business really, they're kind of disabled by their own degeneracy, like their own lack of desire to, like, honor the truth. Let's see, what else do we got here? Same thing again. Delete. So yeah, this is Morvern Peninsula. So this is the babies, this is Finn as a baby. But I mean, honestly, I'm not sure if this might be Oysen also. That could be, because Oysen is said to be the child of Fingal and the child of Maive the deer, who's like these peninsulas up here. So there's at least a solid chance that this is the Isle of Mull, that's basically Oysen or Ocean, or however you say that thing's son's name. Let's see, this is Diarmid's, I think. Yeah, I think this is Diarmid, and his yellow spear and his short sword. Well, it's not very short here. Maybe this is his other sword or something. I guess this is his short sword. And this is the boar. And let's see, this is like an ancient Scottish carving that I was thinking it could relate to Finn McCool, and like, it has like a fish here and a dog, which there's lots of, prominent dogs and fish in the Fenian cycle. There's the salmon of knowledge. There's Fingal's dogs, Bran and Sheolang. this thing is actually shaped a bit like an island at the far north of Scotland.